Let's talk some Torah. It's a double parsha this week, Chukat Balak. Let's talk a little bit more about Chukat, and then the next 2 days we'll talk about Parshat Balak. It is an incredible thing to look at when one generation passes. And in this week's parsha, we have the passing of Aaron and of Miriam. It leaves Moses as the singular representative of that generation symbolically. We know that the desert generation, the generation that was freed itself from Egypt, dies during the desert. A new generation is born in the desert. And perhaps that is an indication that in different moments of history, different qualities and different experiences are very important. We have that in a much, calmer way when we discuss digital immigrants and digital natives. It's a term used by some to describe when an older generation comes to use technology that is new. The older generation reads the instructions, sometimes has to learn the language similar to any immigrant experience when it comes to new technology. But a digital native, my children, for instance, understand more intuitively the technology because they were born into a world that never had corded phones, never wrote down directions. These are different ways that a new generation begins to think, and we see in our experience of the Parsha this week that Miriam's death is a striking loss, even if the next generation is prepared for what's to come. And of course, that also is a beautiful idea that is rarely ever true, because what generation is ever truly prepared for what is to come? That's davar shelo ba le'olam in tradition, something that doesn't yet exist. So let's look at Miriam's passing for a moment and contemplate it in the context of generational transition. When Miriam dies, it actually doesn't even register as a very big part of the text. Miriam dies. The text says, just in the English, Miriam died there, Vayamot Miriam Sham, and she was buried there, and the community was without water. And it's an interesting thing because we had no idea until this verse that water was at all connected, to Miriam, except that when you pay attention to the times that Miriam appears in the text, it has a lot to do with water. Our introduction to Miriam actually comes without her name. Our introduction to Miriam is as the older sister of the baby boy that was born in Egypt and placed in the Nile by his mother. His sister followed him. So we don't really know anything about Miriam at first until we know about Moshe. That's a very complicated part of the biblical text where women are often known because of the men that they're related to. Different topic, different day, but important to name. When you look at other instances of Miriam in the text, one of them is at the sea. When we cross the Red Sea, she takes her timbrels and leads dancing. The sea again touches that moment, and so in the context of water, her life. What does it mean at the very end of her life? When she dies, there was no water. Well, according to tradition, and Rashi quotes this, that the juxtaposition of Miriam's death and the lack of water tells us that there was a magical well that followed Miriam wherever she went. And there are famous songs about this. Debbie Friedman has a famous one that some of us might know. But we don't know anything about that well until generations later. In fact, we don't know anything about the association of water with Miriam until she dies. Often this happens in life. The blessings that accompany a person, the way that they have an impact on the world, are largely felt when they are suddenly absent. We notice the blessings that people bring when we don't have them anymore, and it doesn't have to be like that. I want to take this moment to acknowledge a strange thing about the text. In the entire Chumash, the entire Hebrew Bible, the 5 books of Moses, Miriam's name only appears 4 times. Because we believe that she is Moses' older sister, we count that first instance even though her name is not mentioned. So Miriam as a character appears a total of 5 times in the Chumash. Isn't that surprising? Given what a powerful figure Miriam is, having a Miriam's cup at the Seder, invoking Miriam as a source of our knowledge of dance and singing, recognizing that the exodus from Egypt wouldn't have happened had she not intervened and saved her brother's life. One thing after another about Miriam should be quite shocking to us, not only that in her death the community realized that suddenly they didn't have what they needed, but also the fact that the text itself barely tells us anything about our hero, our matriarch. So I want to bless us to do something a little bit different than the text actually suggests. I'd love to bless us to consider the people in our lives and what blessings they bring while we have them. As Mike and the Mechanics said in a famous song, in the living years, why wait? It's not too late to praise Miriam now, but I imagine it would have been very beautiful, and maybe it was, because the text doesn't tell us everything. It would have been very beautiful for Miriam to know how much she mattered to her community, that she was nourishing, that the gift of the water that accompanied her was a merit that we saw. So often, the people in our lives who contribute so much to our lives, to our hearts, to our community, to our world, we don't say thank you enough. So in Miriam's memory, in the memory of the great prophetess, who we knew so little about, and who we continue to learn about to this day, let's find a way of recognizing the good hakarat hatov, saying thank you for the gift of the people in our lives. We might know it. It might feel obvious, but sometimes we don't say it. Maybe we should. Maybe we can. Maybe we will. All right, friends, let's go into a good day. Here we go. Bless you, friends. See you tomorrow.